All right, so hello everyone. I would like to present to you our work, which is called Reinterpreting Schlemmer's Triadic Ballet, Interactive Costume for Unthinkable Movement. So I would like to say a couple of words about the authors. So my name is Pavel. I'm a PhD student at KTH Royal Institute of Technology. And at the time of the project, I was a master's student at Bauhaus University. And this work has been done under the supervision of Professor Eva Hornecker with assistance of Michaela Honauer and Pedro Sanches. Unfortunately, they're not here today. So let's start with a quick demo. So as you see, we've done a reinterpretation of Triadic Ballet costume by Oskar Schlemmer. But what is Triadic Ballet? So it's Oskar Schlemmer's best-known work. It is a true essence of Bauhaus movement and its avant-garde performance from 1920s. It was done in the opposition to dance traditions of that time, to a new German school of dance which was propagating free body movements and classical ballet with its strict rules. It consists of 3 acts, 3 colors, 3 moods, and 3 appearances. It consists of 12 dances and 18 costumes. I just mentioned Oskar Schlemmer and Bauhaus movement, and I'm pretty sure to many of you those are known terms, but I would like to give just a brief historical reference, just in case. So Schlemmer was a German painter, sculptor, designer, and choreographer. He was a teacher of Bauhaus school and influential member of the movement. Among his interests was human body, body in motion, and body in relation to space. Bauhaus movement, well, Bauhaus is German art school and one of the most influential design movements of the 20th century. It has unique aesthetics of combined arts and crafts. They wanted to bring art back to the ordinary life. They had an idea that mass production can be reconciled with art. So for them, functionality was coming first, and form was following the function. So one of the most interesting parts of the Triadic Ballet are, of course, the costumes. They are colorful, 3-dimensional objects. They are made of various materials: metal, padded cloth, papier-mâché. They represent abstractions of the human body. Form and material properties of the costume determine the dancer's movements. These costumes are an integral part of the Bauhaus movement. They represent the aesthetics of industrialism in its glorious form. We made a study of the original costumes, and there were 4 big groups of findings that we have discovered. So the first big group of findings was story embedded in the costumes. So when the dancers engaged with the costume, when they look at it, when they try it on, when they dance in it, the story of the character that they represent is being unfolded. It also happens through the limitations, which are considered to be a source of inspiration. Such limitations as restricted movements, added and redistributed weight, as well as side restrictions. Which brings us to the second big group of findings, which is called restricted movement to create new emotional expressions. So first of all, it's not really movement restriction, but reduction. It helps dancers to depart from the classical formula of ballet it forces them to be slow, it changes their mood and triggers feeling, it alters their expressiveness and communication. Costume is in a way a guide for developing choreography. The third group of findings is weight, momentum, and shape of the costumes. And for many of the dancers, excessive weight of the costumes was seen as a drawback. They were losing their normal, well-grounded feeling of own weight. It was hard for them to find and then keep the balance. Some of the costumes had uneven weight distribution, and some other costumes, due to their excessive weight, had inertial motion, which was adding another degree of challenge for the dancers. They have to think when to start the movement, how to convey it, and when to finish it. Some of the costumes have extended limbs, making advanced partnery techniques such as lift pretty much impossible. But what did we do? We created a modern interpretation of a costume from Oskar Schlemmer's Triadic Ballet. Why was it interesting to us? Well, we wanted to study the relationship between the costume, human, and space in a way Schlemmer saw it. Vigor and modern feel of the costume was truly amazing for us. We wanted to do a reinterpretation through the creation of new interactive design. We wanted to preserve movement limitation, and we wanted to modernize rather than reinvent. In a broader scope, our goal was to explore and extend the design space for wearables by focusing on wearables' impact on movement in kinesthetic perception. So, as I already mentioned, we wanted to stay true to Schlemmer's original intentions, and that was one of the reasons why we picked the wire costume. So, there were other reasons for that. First of all, it belongs to the final part of the performance, which is believed to be Schlemmer's vision of the future. It has interaction with other characters on the stage, and it is subject of various interpretations. Speaking of which, wire costume is a super interesting artifact which reflects the imagination of future at Schlemmer's time. What was happening in the beginning of the 20th century? Well, it was the time of electrification. In 1837, telegraph was invented. In 1895, radio was invented. So, according to one of the interpretations, wire costume is a personification of electricity. To develop this idea even further, in 1887, 5 continents were connected by thick copper wire. Now, it is replaced by fiber optics. So the same is done in the costume. Metal hoops are replaced with fiber optic ones. Another thing that we made use of was counterpoint. When the dancer is dancing on the stage, the light from the spotlight reflects from metal surfaces, and it creates traces of lights on the black box of theater. So it all brought us to the idea, let's use light as a material. At a certain point of our design process, we had 2 competing designs. One idea was to use rigid skeleton of leather and metal complemented with fiber optics. Another one was to use plexiglass as a combination of rigidity and glow. Nevertheless, heat treatment and bandage significantly decreased the luminosity of plexiglass, making leather and metal prototype a basis for the final version of the costume. So, as you can see, that's the final version of the costumes, and I must conclude that the weight of the original costume was preserved. Hoop size and their placement was determined based on original sketches of Oskar Schlemmer, as well as old photographs. And the limitations of the original costumes were still preserved. The dancer was unable to lower her hands, and no classical ballet movements, like for example pirouettes, were possible. And of course, the costume had interactive behavior, and I have a small demo for that as well. So as you can see, there are basically 2 effects happening, 2 interactive behaviors. When the dancer is moving kind of swimming motion, there's the wave effect, and when she's raising her arms, there's a spark effect. They're different in the behavior and color. So, we made an interview with the dancer wearing our reinterpreted costume, and what did we find out? There were similar issues with weight and momentum as in the original costume. It had similar movement limitation as the original costume. It was difficult for the dancer to find and maintain the balance. There was also the ambiguity of perception of costume and the body. Am I connected to the costume, or is the costume connected to my body? The costume was also providing her with new means of expressions. But all in all, she got used to the limitations pretty fast, and as the dancer mentioned, it was guiding me to the movements by restricting me in the movements I can't do. Speaking about the interactivity aspect of the costume, the interaction was considered to be pretty intuitive. It took the dancer 5 to 6 attempts to adjust her movements. And what is more interesting, there was an expanded mutual relationship between dancer and the costume. If in the original costume, it was only the costume affecting the dancer by restricting sight, movement, means of expression, in our new interactive version of the costume, the dancer had a chance to affect the costume back by triggering lighting effects. And there is a super nice quote by the dancer: while ordinary dancers' costumes are created in a way to give a dancer all possibilities for all syncable movements, this wire costume gives the dancer all possibilities for all unsyncable movements. But what is our contribution to HCI, to the field of wearables? Well, some of restrictions applied to wearables can result in new forms of being in the world when own bodily movements are combined with movements of interactive costume. And restricted movements shouldn't be considered bad usability, but rather an estrangement methods revealing underlying properties. It can be used in the design for bodily awareness, in physical therapy and stress treatment. It could be used as a tool for empathy to discover the limitations of each other's bodies and fears. It can be used in interactive performance art and design of pervasive games to convey a character. And it just can be used to discover novel ways to connect the body to smart objects, environment, and nature. Thank you for your attention, and I would really like to answer some questions.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the talk. Shadan Sadarian from Office, Germany. I was thinking that normally the costume is actually aimed for emphasizing and exaggerating the act. Did you also look at the perspective of the audience? Because, for example, a ballet skirt, as defined in the previous or in its original way, is actually emphasizing on the act of the ballerina and the poses of the body. So you actually concluded that limitations are not always perceived as bad, but were the acts actually from the audience perceived as attractive? Because that's I think that's the main goal of a costume.
So first of all, thank you very much for your question. It's a really good one. The costume, I mean, there was no performance using our interactive costume on stage so far, but it would be like totally interesting and fascinating to see the audience reaction. So unfortunately, I probably don't have the answer for your question at the moment. But from what I can see, the aesthetics of the original costume was not lost. So I would assume, but it's a wild guess, that the perception of the costume would actually be the same, since the original costume was glowing due to the spotlight and drawing these traces. Now it's drawing traces using lighting effect, so to say. So it should be quite similar, but it's only an audience who can decide. So
Thanks.
Just a theoretical guess. Thank you.
Hi, Eric Paulus, UC Berkeley. Thank you for importing a really important sort of historical and really inspiring work from our history. I think that's important to kind of bring that to this community. I'm sort of curious, you mentioned it on the last answer there, but is there any plan to go forward with this, with performances, or to look at the, you motivated why you chose this particular one of the costumes, but will there be other ones that you're going to work on, or will there, I'm just not sure where the project's going, but really excited about it.
Thank you for your question. I mean, I would really love to continue this work, but We'll see. Now I'm a PhD student at another place, KTH. It was the work in cooperation with Bauhaus, but who knows, maybe they will invite me for some project and we will do all the costumes. That would be truly amazing, and I would really like to go on with this work because it's only one of the costumes, but I would like to assure you that the other ones are as interesting as this one, and they all worth attention. And I would really hope that some other people from our HCI community will create a new versions of those costumes because there is so much into them.